Welcome to another edition of Foodie Friday. I just got the high sign from my co-host and daughter, Lydia Turner. It looks something like this. Oh, wait, it's an audio medium.
Nobody can see that.
Nobody could see that.
Pointergate.
Could somebody describe it, perhaps? Pete Campbell, describe the pointy thing that she did to me that I just did back to her.
I thought we weren't supposed to talk about that sort of stuff.
Okay, well, Pip Hansen, can you give us a verbal description?
I would say 2 index fingers.
Yes, sir.
They were index.
Directed forward.
Yes, sir.
In sort of a jocular fashion.
Jocular, nice.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Nice word choice indeed. My name is Brian Turner. You can call me BT. There's my daughter and co-host Lydia Turner.
Hello.
Hello, podcast friends. And by way of an sort of oblique introduction, we already brought to the microphones Peter Campbell from the Red Wagon Pizza Company. Hello again to you, Peter.
Hello.
And Pip Hansen from
Hello.
Marvel Bar, soon not to be at Marvel Bar for crying out loud.
For a moment, yeah.
Yeah, we're going to find out a little bit more about what goes on in the world of both of these gentlemen and future plans, as the case would be for a food guy who is a mobile food guy, now a brick-and-mortar guy, and a longtime bar guy who's on his way to new adventures overseas. Not your first time on an adventure overseas, though. When did the whole Japan thing happen for you? I know that's a part of your background and narrative, Pip, but were you a bartender first and then went to Japan, continued your career, and then came back here? I'm trying to remember your timeline and the Japan part.
Yeah, I was a pretty new bartender. I'd been, and I thought I was amazing, of course, but I had been bartending for like a year.
Look at me go.
Maybe 2 years, actually. And I had been, bar backing at the Dakota.
And so how old were you at this
I was
time?
26 when I left.
All right.
And this is 2007. And I had actually been an exchange student in Japan already. So
You speak Japanese.
I do, yeah. I studied in high school and college, and the exchange, made it kind of a natural choice.
So junior, senior year in high school, exchange student?
After my senior year.
After your senior year. Okay, cool.
Yeah. And so it was kind of a natural choice, and I actually went to Japan to teach English, although, I mean, not to teach English, but that's how you get the visa, and kind of with the intention of finding a different line of work.
So an ESL sort of thing, English as second
It
language
was more like-
sort of teaching thing, or not?
It was more like McEnglish, like the terrible, artificial, like a cheap consumer product that resembles teaching, but really does not have any of the nutritional content of actual teaching.
It's the tofu of English teaching.
Oh, tofu! I wish it was tofu. It's more like the partially hydrogenated soybean oil of
Okay,
teaching.
I gotcha.
It's-
Because at least tofu has some protein.
Oh,
there
tofu's
aren't
cool,
there aren't
yeah.
many other nutrients, but it does have some
tofu.
protein.
I think tofu is super cool, but again, this is my Japanese background probably biasing me.
Right.
But no, I mean these companies are. I mean, I don't want to speak ill of them, but they deserve some ill to be spoken of. It's really just they just take money and really don't provide much education. It's kind of it's not a great thing.
Right.
I kind of did not like the industry.
Yeah.
But fortunately for me, I got back into bartending within a month of being in Japan, despite my intentions to leave bartending forever behind me, and that's how it started.
When you arrived in Japan, was there a specific place that you wanted to live? Was there a specific groove that you wanted to get into? And then how did that stumble into the return to bartending for Pip Hansen?
I didn't really know what to expect. I wanted to be in Tokyo, and that's where I wound up. I wanted to be in a neighborhood called Shimokitazawa, which is where I wound up. And I didn't really have much of a plan beyond just getting there. I think things kind of sort themselves
You're 26 years old.
Right,
You just wanted to go.
out. Right. Well, and the best laid plans, et cetera, et cetera. So, I had this idea of eventually. I think I kind of tend to plan, like 20 years in the future, and then just assume the details are going to get filled in. So, my idea for what I would be doing, today, say, would be, wearing really nice suits and, having a tiny phone, because this was before the iPhone, having the tiniest phone and flying to Russia to sell satellites. That was kind of what I wanted to be doing. So that worked out well.
And like you said, let the chips fall in between.
Right. You just et cetera, and then we're there.
He's a big picture kind of guy.
Well, and you were taken under the wing of a mentor in Japan, Katsuo. Am I pronouncing that?
Mr. Ueda Kazuo.
Ueda
Yeah,
Kazuo.
Mr. Ueda.
Okay.
Yeah.
What was that narrative like in him being that mentor for you? I know that you were with him twice a month and studying Japanese bartending and what that meant and entailed. How did he find you, or you find him, and how did that happen?
Right. So I started working at this bar. It was like a members only kind of business club. And it was felt very much like the Lost in Translation bar, the New York bar and the Hyatt. And I pretty quickly realized, once I had learned how things went behind that bar, I pretty quickly realized that we weren't doing the best work we could be doing based on what I'd seen in other bars. Not even super great bars, but hotel bars are just kind of hotel bars.
Right.
That's kind of a generality you can often make.
You get that standard.
So I started seeking out people who could really, the bars that would really blow my mind. And they're all, well, not all, but a lot of them are in Ginza, where Jiro dreams of sushi works. And so I would start to go into these bars and, offer, some of them I would offer like English teaching lessons for free in exchange for technique lessons. So I worked with a guy called Iguchi Noriyuki he's the head of technique at the Nihon Bartenders Association, the NBA. And so I taught him English, tried to teach, get him ready for when a guest would come into the bar from, who spoke English and not Japanese. And in turn, he taught me how to stir, basically. And Mr. Ueda, I went into, everyone said, go into Tender. If you're going to look for the best cocktails.
Mr. Ueda's bar.
Yeah. Go into, Mr. Ueda's bar, Tender. And so I went into Tender and, I really didn't intend to introduce myself. I just kind of wanted to watch and learn and then pay my bill and leave. And my friend really embarrassed me by my friend who came with me was like, he's a bartender, this guy.
Right here.
He makes drinks.
He's watching really closely for a reason.
And so I was really embarrassed that he, kind
Called
of
you
outed
out.
me. Yeah. But it worked out. Mr. Ueda, I don't know, he just kind of took a shine to me. And
from the get-go, after
much,
your friend, hey, right here.
Even before that, he kind of, he made all our drinks that night personally, which is, you kind of get relegated to the underlings a lot of times.
Right.
But he, even before that, he was making all our drinks and talking to us about what he was doing. And so he just took a shine to me for some reason. And at the end of the night when we were paying our bill, he said, if you want to come in and learn what we're doing, I'll teach you. So at 4:00 every Wednesday or every other Wednesday for the summer of 2008, I was going in and talking to him about what he was doing and how he thought about it.
That's incredible.
It was cool.
Yeah. Well, what kind of categorizes Japanese bartending as opposed to American bartending?
It's very meticulous. It's very regimented. There is not. I mean, it's all about getting every detail right. And there's not necessarily quite as much sort of wild, off the cuff, I don't know, creativity.
Yahoo! Making this up as
right.
I
I mean, they don't
go.
get, they don't get messy. They don't really make mistakes. But as a result of not making mistakes, they also don't necessarily have that same kind of experimental spirit. You know?
Did you like that sort of Wild West reference that I did?
Exactly
there?
how
he was
they
kind
are.
of looking at me like,
I
"Yep."
wanted to describe your fingers.
They were
like pistols.
They were more six gun like. See now you're into it. I'm glad.
Exactly.
I'm glad. Yahoo! I'm Drinky the Kid.
So is it more old school cocktails in Japan?
Super
or is
old
it,
school.
So not so much of the craft movement that we see and have seen since
You know,
11.
at the time, it was like the craft movement before the craft movement had come here.
Really?
I mean, they have this sort of crystallized 1950s style cocktail culture that has never really evolved out of the 50s. So, they missed the, sort of the disco shots and the woos and the surfers on acid. They vodka, so if we're talking like 50s, vodka was a thing and a big thing, but it wasn't the only thing, certainly. And a lot of the cues are more reminiscent of sort of maybe post-war culture rather than pre-prohibition culture, which is kind of what you see in the New York speakeasies or the East Coast style bars. So there's lots of cream tuxedos happening, and it's an odd thing, but it really is. It's evocative of a very certain period that's been distorted, like sort of transformed through a weird lens. And they take this thing and they do it as well as they possibly can, and they spend years, learning how to like just shaking with rice in the shaker, just trying to like get the sound perfect, stuff like that. And so they'll just obsess over these little details of this one scene that they've kind of latched onto.
Maybe like a juggler or a magician would practice their craft, because you have to make it just absolutely perfect, whether it's a sleight of hand thing for a magician. Obviously, for a juggler, where the hands fall and the balls, the pins fall, have to be precise, and it has to look good, and you have to engage with your audience.
The rhythm and the sensory
Sure.
part of it,
that's,
too.
I mean, that's the analogy that's coming into my head, just you describing just those techniques alone.
They're all about the surface, the facade. And that's not to say that there's not quality beneath that, but I think, when you pay so much attention to, say, the process, the end result is it's guaranteed to be at least carefully thought out. And so they are kind of something I've realized about a lot of what I learned in Japan. In hindsight, is that they are masters of, presenting the front. They're kind of masters of like intimidation in a way, because they make it, they make it look so impressive and so subtly impressive that really, who is going to tell them they're not doing it right, or who's going to tell them it's not? It's probably, if you don't like it, it's probably your problem. And so they're really good at that stuff. Yeah, and that's maybe the thing they're best at, I'd say.
Yeah, that's a technique and a skill set unto itself. That subtlety. That's like a great actor doesn't want you to see the acting on stage. They want you to believe the character. If you see the acting, they're not doing their job.
The experience is, I mean, at the end of the day, no matter what you're doing, the experience is really the most important part, and that's not just how the thing tastes. In fact, how a thing tastes is probably the least of the experience. It's, how the music is, how the service was. Probably service is the biggest thing.
Okay.
And so all of those things go into your experience, and you kind of blame it on the drink or give credit to the drink, but you don't realize all the other details that went into that. And that's probably the same for a good pizzeria, I'm guessing.
Yeah, I think it has to do with anything having to do with the service industry. If you look at how people spend their money, whether it's for a drink, whether it's for a pizza, whether it's for going out to the movies, if you're not experiencing your expectations when you spend your money, what I mean by that is saying, when people walk into our restaurant, as an example, if the temperature's off, if the lighting is off, it's going to have a different take-home effect. It's going to have a different feeling. That's in a lot of ways why I feel like you can't really replicate New York-style pizza here, because you're not buying it at 3 o'clock in the morning. You're not stepping over a vagrant.
Right.
There isn't the redolent smell of sewer coming from the street.
You're not terrified at what's on the bottom of your shoes.
You could serve the exact same pizza in Minneapolis, and it just wouldn't be the same, no matter what.
Because the experience isn't the same.
Right.
Yeah, indeed, that hospitality industry vibe, whether it's the bartending side of things and the bar side of things or the restaurant side, it all half of the experience, if not maybe more, like you mentioned, from the Japanese culture and any culture might be the experience itself.
I think that's, when I was playing in bands, we always kind of reminded ourselves that nobody actually comes to hear us play. Like when we were playing the Uptown Bar, nobody was there because they wanted to hear us play, especially not us. They were there because their friends were there and the beer was on special and it was a fun bar to be in, and there happened to be music, and some of them would listen and go, those guys are all right, I guess. But mostly they weren't here for the music, even though that was ostensibly the main attraction.
I totally agree with you, Pip, from the aspect of I've done radio in the Twin Cities and elsewhere for a lot of years now, and I think you reach a better point in understanding what you're doing when you realize that you're not there for a lot of folks to be the focus of what they're doing. You're there as a companion, and you might be among other companions. They have other friends gathered around. They've got thoughts going through their head, especially at drive time radio slots, morning and afternoons particularly. But I do a lunchtime midday show now, and the same thing's happening for me, just in a different way. They're thinking about work, or if it's lunchtime, they're thinking about eating, but I'm a companion, and I'm not there as the focus. And so, yeah, same sort of thing. And you find yourself in a better spot when you come to realize that. Put your ego in the right spot.
Pip, is your background in music?
My background is pretty multidisciplinary.
Yeah.
So I was writing and drawing as a kid, and then kind of transitioned in my later teens and 20s to really being interested in music, while still kind of writing in a journalism major and doing design work on whatever I could find. And then there's just kind of a bunch of other things thrown in, like I used to do claymation videos when I was in high school.
Cool.
But I think it all cross-pollinates. I think it all it's all applicable.
Creativity and-
right.
yeah.
And the more kind of, if creativity is, making connections that haven't been made before, which is one definition I've seen, then being well-rounded, I think, is really useful.
Where did your interest in bartending come from? Was it being a part of that vibe with music and appreciating that and wanting to curate it a little bit more, or?
Bartending was a job. Restaurants were a job for me as a drummer initially. They were just a good job for a musician, an aspiring musician. But I happened, my first night behind a bar was with Johnny Michaels from La Belle Vie, or formerly from La Belle Vie, and he took a shine to me, and we hit it off. And right around the time my band started to get a bit shaky, I was working at La Belle Vie and really seeing the potential for stuff that I, in a way, had never really been explored. I mean, the cocktail culture, the cocktail boom really was just lifting off in New York and San Francisco in 2006 when I started working at La Belle Vie. And so we didn't really know about that. We were just kind of just pulling stuff out of thin air, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And making new creations that now, given your long tenure at Marvel Bar, really have some staying power with people. And I want you to ruminate on a couple of things. I want you to ruminate on some of those creations when that whole craft cocktail movement made its way here. Who were some of the people that led the charge? And I'm sure you'll include Johnny Michael amongst yourself and others. So you ruminate on that for a moment here, Pip Hansen, while we segue to Pizza Pete Campbell, whom I can't say his name without putting pizza in front of it. It's been that way, and I'm sure you're fine with that.
100%, yeah.
100%
It's pretty
fine
common.
with it.
Have you always been Pizza Pete? How long has the pizza preceded your name?
I would say consistently since about 2005.
Okay.
But sometimes my kids' friends just know me as Pizza.
Pizza, yeah.
There's no
Ironically,
other
his
name.
first signature dish was lasagna, so it's really it's
is
weird.
very
You
ironic.
think it'd be lasagna, Pete? No, that's not the way that rolls. I know. I go off on these tangents. Just play along, and you do so kindly. Thank you very much. Boy, here we go again. Woohoo! There come
boy.
the six guns. Peter, when did you make your first pizza? How long ago does that experience happen? Were you just a little kid when you became enamored with pizza?
Yeah, 2 is
Really?
the way the story goes, and the burn. My pizza's been part of my family since my grandfather got back from World War II and started making pizzas with my mom and her sisters and my grandma in North Jersey.
Was he stationed, say, in Italy or that part of the
No,
world?
I don't believe
or
he
not?
was. I don't believe he was.
Okay.
That's when the excitement, I think a lot of the other GIs that were in Italy came back, and North Jersey was a hotbed of all these people trying out new pizzas, and he didn't want to go into the business of pizza, so he made pizzas at home every Friday night.
Isn't that cool?
And it was just the advent of pizza really hitting our shores and making their way to the middle of the country. And they were in North Jersey at the time. I was born in Detroit in 75 and made my first pie in 77, so it's been told. The legend exists.
That little Pizza Pete got his hands on some dough, and the rest is history.
Exactly.
What kind of categorizes your family's pizza recipe? Is it kind of one version that everybody knows and does, or no? Does everybody have their kind of flavor in?
I would tell you my mom probably would admit publicly she does not like my sauce.
Really?
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, pizza is so unique to individuals,
Sure.
and I've been making my own version of pizza for a long time. So these are not family recipes that have been passed down. I'm not Italian. I'm an Irish kid. These
Campbell
are,
is not an Italian.
Campbell is not an Italian name. I would say we make a modern American pizza. That we don't subscribe to any geography. My sauce isn't a sauce that's been passed down through generations and generations. It's a sauce that I've been making for the last 15 years.
Okay.
As I've made pizzas with my wife and my kids. But like I said, my mom likes just crushed tomatoes, and that's not what we do.
Yeah. You developed the sauce trial and error at home, I'm guessing, over the years.
Over the years, yeah. It really took off, I'd say, in 2004 and 5, the federal government was tickling the idea of calling pizza a vegetable. And I thought that was crazy. They were. This was a plan to keep it on the public school menu.
Yeah.
And I thought, man.
Like ketchup as a vegetable
exactly.
thing. Right.
The last thing pizza is a vegetable. But it's too darn good to not be good for you. So I set off to find a better way to make pizza. And so I started looking up different mills in the cities here, and I found Sunrise Flour Mill in North Branch, Minnesota, where we get our flour today. It's a partially whole grain, organic, locally milled flour. We use that. It has more nutritional value than the Caputo 00 flours that are out there. It's decidedly the wonder bread of flour, but it's also the go-to for pizza.
Sure.
We don't use that. It has more nutrition. We use less cheese, but better cheese to get the flavor profile we want. So we don't sell healthy pizza, because if you want to not sell something on a menu, put it under healthy choices, and you won't sell any of it. So we do try to make a better pizza that's better for you. So.
And that all began, in the Campbell family kitchen. Then going back to that time frame.
Well, I don't think that the making a better pizza went back to when I was 2, but having my.
I guess I'm thinking about you and your family.
Yes, my wife and I in South Minneapolis with a 1-year-old toddling around the house, and this article I read that talked about the Fed thinking about calling pizza vegetables, where I just said, "No way,
it can't have this.
Can't happen.
Can't have this." Were you already ruminating and thinking about? I'm using that word again, ruminating. Huh? Uh-huh.
It's a good word.
It's a good word. Were you already thinking about the business of pizza, or was that just you wanting to make a better pizza? And when did that tumble start happening?
No, I don't know that I ever really know when the architecture of where I am today began. I didn't start in 2005 and say, there's going to be a restaurant. It's going to be called Red Wagon Pizza, and this is what I'm going to be doing in 10 years. It was more just an evolution of an idea. It started with, we had a South Minneapolis house, $50 Craigslist oven that we had thrown in the wall, and we made 30 to 40 pizzas a Friday night out of it and delivered to our neighbors, and we would have pizza parties. And then we'd see how far we could drive one.
So it became a thing. Just sort of a thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then when it was past the hat time at the church and the school and the fundraiser time, I'd say, hey, let's throw a party, and all the parents can attend and pay X amount of dollars to attend, and all the money will go to the school. And
sure.
So we did that for a few years, and then.
And what were you doing for work during this time?
I was in real estate acquisition for wireless companies.
Okay.
I built cell phone towers.
Gotcha.
But my whole life, whenever it was time to have a job, college, high school, I was throwing pizzas, delivering pizzas. I was always in the pizza industry. Ran a pizza shop in Boston. Always involved with pizza, but never as a career until most recently.
Yeah. And again, it just evolved. It just one thing tumbles onto another thing, and it tips over. The mobile pizza thing is how it began for you.
It is. So the fundraisers that we were doing eventually grew into the church basically said, hey, do you mind feeding everyone? Instead of just offering a party for people to attend, can you feed 350 guests in the gymnasium? And I said, well, sure. Sure. Why not? Let's go for it.
I can handle that.
And I'd kind of become a yes man at that point in my life. I decided I'd been saying no to too many things, and at that point in my life, I just decided to say yes more often. And Mary Beth Stotts, who was part of the kids' school, came up to me and said, hey, we want you to do the fundraiser for the school and feed everybody and build a kitchen in the stairwell. And I said, okay, we got 30 days. I didn't have a name of the company yet. I'd been really having a hard time with how to name it. I mean, 4 generations of my family in pizza. How do I say it's Pete's Pizza or it's this pizza? I wanted to identify the genre of pizza that I was doing, a modern American pizza, but one that transcends generations. So through a very long process with a close friend, we came up with the name Red Wagon Pizza and ran with it. My brother made the logo, and we printed some shirts, borrowed Sunrise Flour Mill's mobile oven, and we made 350 people in a gym really happy. And after that, I was just like,
I'm into this.
This is awesome. Yeah. I have to do more of this.
Yeah.
And then the next day I walked down and talked to Mark Settigren at Nace Hardware in Linden Hills, and they were starting a farmer's market. And I said, hey, I'd like to throw my hat in the ring. And, we talked about the fact that I wasn't commercial yet, and that I would use it as an incubator for my business.
Okay.
And I said, why don't I have a tryout, have the board come out, try the food. And if you guys think it's worthwhile, I'll buy the commercial oven, I'll find the commissary, I'll get this thing off the ground. So that's what I did. So it was April 15th of 2012. We tried out for the Linden Hills Farmers Market.
And you made it in?
We made it in.
And away you go.
Exactly.
So with such a competitive, and there's a vast pizza hub here in the Twin Cities. There's so many choices. There's so many good pizza shops. Ooh, got some water.
We got to stay hydrated. That's all good.
What's your edge? Is it having quality organic ingredients, or what would you classify it as? Where's that sit?
I'd say that I think in the restaurant industry at large, if you're not somehow tied to the farming or organic strain of the food industry at this point, you're not a player in the marketplace. So I wouldn't say that's our edge. Mm-hmm. I think that's an element that resonates with our customer base. I think our flavor combinations are fairly unique. We have styles of pizza that I've never seen before and that are really fun. And they're similar to what other people have done, but they're done in a way that is fairly creative. So I think that paired with the type of food we use, the flour, the cheese, the quality that we're going after. We also have 36 beers on tap. There's no other pizzeria in town that has that.
Yeah.
And I think that beer and pizza go very, very well together.
No disagreement there.
I've heard that's good.
Rumor has it.
So I think that's probably our biggest edge in the restaurant right now, is that the presence of not only just delicious pizza, beer, and then we're also doing a lot of rustic cooking out of iron skillets right into the oven. So everything that we cook in that oven, everything hot that comes out of the kitchen comes out of the wood-fired oven.
Yeah, yeah.
That's fantastic.
Which will be very exciting Saturday when we start doing brunch.
And what are
This
you going to
Saturday.
do?
There's a lot of things we're going to do. But
Small skillet sort of thing? So
Small
you can
skillets.
do like a lining of potatoes on the bottom and some eggs on top and
Well, you'll
that
have to
sort of
come and
single
see.
thing. Yeah. Well, all right. You don't need to reveal anything you don't want to, but my imagination's already going at it.
very rustic. It'll be delicious. I
With
think
a
little bit of a Jersey spin on it too.
nice, a lot of different angles. And now the Jersey spin. I mean, it's going to be with a side of hazardous waste or
Well,
what?
that's not very nice. Come on.
I know. I couldn't help it. You set me. It was a softball. That was too easy. The Sunrise Flower Connection, the local flower connection out of North Branch. Was that something that your customers became hip to right away? Did you sort of
Oh, yeah.
push that out there as a part of that local sourcing narrative
100%.
for your company? Yeah.
When we started at the
Because
Linden
as you
Hills
said, it's a
Farmers
big thing
Market-
now for everyone.
It is.
Yeah.
When we started the Linden Hills Farmers Market, Daryl and Marty Glanville, the people who own Sunrise Flour Mill, were right next to me.
Okay.
And so when people would have questions about the flour, I'd be like,
Right here.
Here they are.
"Hey, D,
Yeah. And you can buy and were they selling there too? So
Oh, yeah.
you could buy a 5 or a 10-pound bag right there.
right there."
Yeah, that's pretty neat.
Yeah.
When it comes to cheese, other things like that, do you try now to add that same layer of narrative to what you're doing wherever you can?
Wherever we can. I mean, there are certain things. For example, the soppressata that we use, which is on easily one of our most popular pizzas, the Red Wagon pizza. We're not getting that here.
Right.
We'd like to. Red Table's got some great charcuterie coming out of North Minneapolis, and we're starting to work with them more and more. But the flavor profile of the soppressata we use currently is not really in line with what they're doing yet.
Yeah.
And hopefully we'll start to make some changes on our menu so we can adopt more of their product.
Very cool.
But
are they hip to maybe working to find the flavor profile that you're
I'm
looking
sure
for?
they would
Yeah.
be.
Yeah. If you had enough volume need for them,
I
and
think
what have
that's
you.
probably the biggest issue is that we're not a big enough fish for them.
Yeah.
Maybe. I don't know. I should talk to Mike about it. He's a great guy.
That whole incubator thing that they've got going on in that grain belt area,
So cool.
it's just amazing. The creamery in there, and Mike with the charcuterie company, and just everything happening.
Yeah, Red Table's products are just amazing.
Yeah,
They're
yeah.
so good.
It seems like a hand in glove thing too. Red Table with Red Wagon.
Yeah.
I mean, those things would really align nicely together.
Yeah, absolutely. We actually had an indoor farmers market 2 Sundays ago. The Linden Hills Farmers Market is doing indoor markets to get kind of ready for the season.
Okay.
And it's a chef-driven market, which is unlike a lot of these neighborhood markets that are around. It's really focused on the home cook and buying in bulk. We're open from 7 to 9 a.m. for if you want to come and buy a whole crate of kale instead of just a quart of kale. You can.
Yeah, yeah.
So to get ready for the season, we have all the farmers come and set up shop at the restaurant 2 weeks ago. We did it at Red Wagon. Coming up here in a few weeks, we're going to be doing it at Fulton Brewery. And then a few weeks later, I think it's in May, we'll be doing it at Tilia in Linden Hills.
Sort of all under the umbrella of Linden Hills Farmers Market, but different locations.
Correct.
Yeah, that's
Having
really
the
cool.
chefs, have the farmers come to the chefs. And then once the market opens, the chefs will come to the market.
Pizza Pete Campbell from Red Wagon Pizza Company, Pip Hansen of Marvel Bar. I just wanted to take a break in the action here to plug one of our other podcasts on the Alive and Social Network.
We got a lot of good ones.
We sure do. Twin Cities loves the nightlife, and our pub scene is nothing to shrug at. Jason McGovern and Molly Burke know their way around a pub, and they want to talk with you about everything you need to know about pub life, food, drink, beer, dating, life, beer, cocktails, Twin Cities nightlife, and beer. Minnesota Pubcast, streaming only on the Alive and Social Network. Go to mnpubcast.com. We love those guys.
Yes, we do. That's a pubcast. I don't know if they've been to Marvel Bar, given the moniker pubcast. We'll have to check into it and see if they've made a visit there yet.
I think they're very beer-focused.
Yeah,
Beer.
We've
pub.
got some beer.
Well, I think, there you go. Although it's Red Wagon Pizza Company, that's a pub that's got any place that got 36 beer taps. That's a pub. You're darn right. Hey, you're darn right it is. Pip Hansen, Johnny Michaels. Is he one of those cats that, as you mentioned earlier, the whole craft bar and craft cocktail scene starting on the West Coast, East Coast, mid-2000s, 2006, 2007, was he one of those folks that really sort of led the charge here in the Twin Cities area? And then did you learn in his wake and in his example too?
For sure. I mean, he's kind of the godfather of the city.
Yeah.
In the city's cocktail scene.
Yeah.
And there is, I think things were happening in New York. Things were happening in San Francisco. I'm sure things were happening really all around the country in little pockets here and there that wasn't really mainstream, wasn't well known. You kind of had to know what was happening to find it. And so the stuff Johnny came up with was very different from anything New York was doing, very different from anything San Francisco was doing. The East Coast style is commonly, especially 10 years ago, it was sort of the stereotype was like sort of bitters and vermouth driven, very all about subtlety and like pre-prohibition bitter brown and stirred cocktails. Okay. That was kind of the stereotype. West Coast was like bartender in a farmer's market, kind of bringing back the fresh produce and making more like summery produce driven drinks. And Johnny has his own style as well, and it's hard for me to really describe that style except for maybe psychedelic. It's a really he's got a really interesting take on things. He's one of the most creative people I've ever met, and so Johnny and I, Johnny was basically helping me from day one, and I was lucky enough to be able to work at La Belle Vie with him after a year of bartending elsewhere. And so basically to be bartending at La Belle Vie, especially in 2006, with 1 year of experience under my belt was a huge, huge opportunity for me. And Johnny and I we just pulled stuff out of thin air. It was just a crazy time.
It sounds like you had a real simpatico thing happen with Johnny on an interpersonal level, like you had with Mr. Yaga. Am I saying his name correct?
Mr. Ueda, yeah.
Mr. Ueda, pardon me, in Japan, where he took, from some level, on a personal level, he took a liking to you and knew, I imagine, as soon as you started doing things together, that you had an interest in some skill sets and that there could be layers built on. Same sort of thing happened with John?
Johnny's like a brother to me. I still talk to him today. Mr. Ueda has always been sort of an interesting teacher, but Johnny and I have been really close friends for 10 years. So yeah, I mean, Johnny is just first and foremost a really close friend of mine who happens to be in the same industry and who really taught me a lot when I was a pup. Yeah.
Pete, did you have a pizza professor? Was there someone that you looked up to as far as you pursuing this, or was it more just a family endeavor that turned into this?
I'd say it's more of a family endeavor.
Yeah.
I think once we got into the process of opening the restaurant and getting the mobile operation off the ground, I had a very strong mentor in town here that kind of brought me under his wing, and I answered the silly questions, Craigslist ad says this refrigerator is $75, and online it's $7,500, and I had no idea what that meant. What's the difference?
Yeah.
And this individual was instrumental in kind of showing me the ways and helping me with some stumbling blocks.
Who was this person?
Stephen Brown
From Tilia.
Tilia.
Excellent.
What a great mentor to have. Yeah.
Great friend.
On a taste level, and it sounds like you brought up the refrigerators example, really on a business level too.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
From across the board. I mean, anything having to do with running and operating a successful food business from the beginning. I mean, every question I had, he would field. And at first, he didn't know me from Adam. And we just started getting more and more questions. I was there every day, writing notes, having a beer after work, getting ready, buying the oven, finding commissary space. And one day he walks in, I'm sitting at the bar, and he says, "What's next?" So I'm looking for a place to prep. And he says, "Well, how much space do you need?" Like, I don't know, about 17 inches. I need enough to grate cheese and stack pepperoni. He says, "Well, come with me downstairs to the basement." I'm floored.
Right.
There's a basement? I had no idea there was a basement here. So we go down to the basement, and he introduces me to Lucas and says, "Hey, come down here and you can prep here." We're walking upstairs, and I said, "Well, how much?" And he said, "Forget it. What are you talking about?"
Oh, that's sweet.
Yeah. So he's done a lot of things for me, and he's a dear friend.
Did you meet him hanging out after farmers markets in the neighborhood then? Is that how that kind of spun out? Or did you live in that neighborhood? Like you said, you're hanging at the bar after work?
Yeah, we had been going to Tilia since the week it opened.
Sure.
My wife and I, every week on Wednesdays, we would go with the kids. Kids went to Carondelet right around the corner.
Yep.
And we would go on Wednesday nights at 4:30 and have dinner before the rush and go home. And so we knew each other from the restaurant a little bit. But when I was trying out for the farmer's market, he was on the board. So he came down the road and he's like, "Hey, Pete." I said, "Hey, Steven, what are you doing here?" He's on Red Wagon. And he's like, I'm the chairman of the board. So it wasn't after the farmer's markets. We got to know each other more through the farmer's market and through prepping in his basement.
Have you carried on that mentorship mentee role? From your perspective now, do you have some people that have called upon Pizza Pete Campbell and said, "Geez, I'm doing this. I'd like this." I mean, how has that trickled downstream in your world?
A few. I definitely have. Once we opened the restaurant, we've staffed up with 35, 40 employees pretty quickly. Mm-hmm. One of them actually just left to open his own mobile pizza operation. So yeah, I think it's there. We just hired a guy today from Connecticut who, out of the gates, he says in 2 years I want to open my own slice shop. And we started going through things and talking about a lot of the same advice that Stephen had given me about different resources out there, books to read, things like that. So yeah, I think I've continued it.
What about you, Pip Hansen? Mm-hmm. Do you have a kind of mentee-mentor program? I know that you set up the program at Marvel Bar. What's that like in teaching people how to be bartenders or how to be specific bartenders for Marvel?
I don't consider myself to be an expert enough on anything at all to be able to teach anything. So I'm happy to help people when they come to me with questions, but mm-hmm. I don't feel comfortable yet pretending that I have anything to teach. Our training programs at Marvel are very much, it's kind of like a hierarchical structure. So generally, if you're the newest barback, you're going to be trained by the second newest barback. If you're a barback who's been serving for a while and kind of knows what he's or she is doing, then probably a bartender is going to be showing you the stuff you don't know about either the spirits or the recipes. My role generally is more sort of behind the scenes stuff, admin and creative work. But
okay.
With some of our managers, there's often opportunities to talk about what our approach to a given problem was and if that was the right approach. But I don't feel comfortable trying to be a teacher.
Yeah. Are there people that come to you with those kinds of questions or seeking mentorship?
I mean, maybe I'm probably selling myself a little bit short, but I don't, so certainly people come to me with either, they're going off on their own and starting a bar and they've got either questions about the financial arrangements or just starting points. So yeah, sometimes people come up to me and they're interested in doing it themselves.
Where do you find the inspiration for creating these kinds of recipes on the menu?
I am very much a technique-driven drink maker. So rather than ingredient-driven.
Does that go back to that Japanese set of skill sets as much as anything? Or certainly influenced by that?
I think it goes back before that. My first bartending job, I still remember my first bartending job, a server came up to me once. I didn't do the menus. I was just making the drinks and badly at that. And a server came up to me and said, well, we should put a pomegranate drink on the menu because pomegranate is so hot right now.
It's hot right now.
Right. And to me, it was
Everybody's
like, well, then
talking
why
about
the heck would we put a pomegranate drink on the menu? Why would we do that? Let's think about what's going to be hot next and do that before it's hot. And so and to me, that's kind of ingredient driven. There's always kind of a trendy flavor or an untrendy flavor. Like now, everyone's decided that like we don't like pork belly anymore because there's too much pork belly out there. Like or like kale. Like how can kale ever not be something we should eat? I know it's everywhere, but how can it not be like it grows from the earth? So
lots of ways to prepare it.
So I kind of take issue with this sort of trendy ingredient driven style. Not to mention, I find that if you're using something like, say, you can swap out ingredients, especially in cocktails. You can swap out ingredients all day long, and they're still going to kind of taste roughly the same. Whether you're substituting one fruit for another. I'm not going to take that too far, but I find that generally if you step back and reconsider how you're acting on your ingredients rather than what your ingredients are, you can do really surprising things that don't taste like anything that you've ever really had before, often using ingredients that everyone has at their disposal.
So that goes to that technique-driven aspect again.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So with Johnny, 10 years ago, I went and found a Soda Stream on Craigslist. They were not available 10 years ago. They were,
yeah, sure. That was kind of a new thing.
They weren't even new things. I mean, it was really hard to find one. And so I found a Soda Stream on Craigslist, bought it for like $50. We did this really shady looking deal in the alley of in the parking lot of a Walmart.
Did you bring the money?
Basically, yeah.
Money?
And then we were making carbonated vodka, we were doing especially, with Johnny, we were just doing some crazy stuff way before it had ever really been done before, and it was kind of a classic case of beginner's mind. The idea that you can carbonate something and then it's not going to be anything like anything you've had before. Yeah.
What about the weird infusions that happen and the successful ones and the not so successful ones?
The interesting ones, the successful ones are probably on our menu right now. The unsuccessful ones are much more interesting to me, at least.
That's why I asked that double-edged sword question.
I was one of the things I went around my neighborhood once while I was working at La Bellevue. I went around their neighborhood and started picking basically like ditchweed out of the railroad tracks near my house and started making infusions with it just to see what it would taste like. And I went to like my neighbor's
vodka infusions, I'm guessing.
They were
right?
vodka infusions, yeah.
Okay.
And then I went to my neighbor's yard. He was like a kind of a hippie, so he didn't really cut his grass, didn't use any fertilizer or anything. So I clipped a bunch of grass from his yard and made a vodka infusion with that. And then I think I just smelled the ditchweed infusion and just dumped it. And then I was about to taste the cut grass infusion, and I realized that my dog used to eat cut grass to make himself throw up. And so it's probably not something I wanted to consume. But, so that sounded really it was still, I think they still some of the cooks at La Bellevue give me crap about that. But, now you look at Noma pulling weeds out of the side of highways in Denmark and using those as herbs. It was a really bad execution of an idea that turned out to not be quite so crazy after all.
Yeah, yeah.
I think it was beginner's mind at work.
Any pork belly infusions at all?
Well, no, not pork belly. I tried
because there's too much of that out there.
Well, pork belly is over. The belly of pigs. Why bother? Yeah. I tried lard
or anything.
once.
Okay, that's what I was going to ask. Anything similar? You tried lard once?
Oh yeah, for sure. There's a technique called fat washing, which is the Bacon Manhattan is a universal thing, right? That started at PDT in New York City probably right around 10 years ago, where you pour liquid fat into spirits and freeze them, solidify them, strain them out. And so obviously, as soon as somebody invented fat washing, it's, bacon washing, the way I think, like, I'm never going to do bacon ever, because it's, somebody did that already. And
Never say never.
I don't like to follow in people's footsteps.
Okay.
So I'll never do a bacon drink.
I got you. All right.
But obviously, the technique is there. The fat washing technique is
I
there,
see
and
what
there's
you're saying.
tons of potential for other fats. So, years and years ago, we were trying foie gras and lard and olive oil and just anything, walnut oil, avocado oil, anything that was fat, a fat that you could put in a spirit. We were trying, and they were cool, I guess. But
Any of those stay around?
well, the olive oil washing, it was so subtle. Olive oil washed spirits are really, really subtle. So subtle that it's almost not worth. As soon as you add something else to the mix, it's gonna.
You can't taste
you
the
can't taste
olive.
it, right?
Yeah.
But it led us. I had this kind of eureka moment one night when I was thinking about olive oil washing. I was writing the menu for Marvel before we opened. I was kind of working on my notes, and I realized I had been thinking about making an olive oil washed gin fizz with egg white, a silver fizz. And I realized in this flash that if we're putting egg white in the fizz, then we don't need to wash the gin with the olive oil and strain it out. We can actually put the olive oil directly in. And that led to the Oliveto, which is our emulsified sour, and I think the first of its kind ever. And that's an excellent example of another technique-driven innovation where we're using emulsification, the technique of emulsification, to create something that really doesn't taste like anything anyone's had before.
And it's become a signature for you.
Right.
Yeah, among others. Tell us about the Boulevardier.
The Boulevardier, which one?
Boulevardier. Well, just the technique alone. I mean,
are you referring to the Lincoln County, the charcoal filtered one?
I'm sorry, I'm getting the two drinks mixed up in my head. Yep.
Well,
I'm thinking about the Lincoln County.
You're not exactly, because the Lincoln County is a charcoal filtered Boulevardier.
Okay,
so
got it.
Boulevardier is a whiskey Negroni, whiskey, Campari, and sweet vermouth. And what we do is we take about 10 gallons of the stuff and we rest it on Kentucky lump charcoal for 10 days.
Got it.
And
Wow.
it filters it. It's an open question to me whether the charcoal infuses into the drink or the drink infuses into the charcoal, because the drink kind of mellows out. It definitely softens and smooths out a little bit, but it also acquires a smoky kind of ashen quality to it, which is some people just love it. Some people, that's all they order.
Yeah.
And so that's, I guess you could say that's another example of a technique-driven thing, charcoal filtration or charcoal steeping as a flavoring.
And does it sit into 10 gallons, sits and steeps for a while? Then
10
that's
days,
the idea.
yeah,
And
10
then
days.
slowly filter it out through an even finer mesh filter, that sort of thing. And
Well, we have to filter it through a Buchner funnel, which
Okay.
is basically a vacuum pump that drags liquid through a really fine filter that gravity wouldn't pull it through otherwise, because it's basically charcoal dust at the bottom of the bag. So yeah, we have to filter it really, really well. Otherwise, you get kind of a crunchy mouthful at the end, which is not.
Crunchy.
Yeah, that's not the crunchy technique. Is not one I've found a way to use yet.
Nope.
Does it clean your teeth though? I think it.
A little bit of grit in there?
Yeah.
A little bit of grit.
It seems like we should take this podcast on a field trip.
I think so, too.
I was going to say I've been
thirsty.
dying
Okay.
for pizza.
You've described
dying
things
for a
very well,
cocktail.
Pip, but I think I need to taste them now.
I see you guys in lab coats as much as anything.
One
doing
Halloween
that.
we did wear lab coats for Halloween.
I love it. Before we get into the Foodie Friday 5, we ask the same questions of our guests. Each and every Foodie Friday show. We got into some tangents with Pip here about some odd infusions and some of the, as you said, the fats and things like that you can play with. Pizza Pete, in your world, what's sort of the weirdest ingredient that you've woven into one of your pizzas? And did it work? Did it persist? Did it stay on the menu, or did you try it for a while? It's like, nah, this isn't working. The weeds that we picked on the roadside, like Pip did, just did not work well, or no.
We didn't pick anything out of the road.
Yeah.
But the level of pickling that we use on post garnishing for pizzas, that's probably the strangest thing. And we, on our Lucy, which is a Cuban style pizza, we make our own in-house pickles, and on our banh mi pizza we have pickled carrots, pickled radishes. We put ginger in some of the pickling juices. I mean, so our pickling program, by and large, at Red Wagon, I'd say would be the most interesting and kind of out of the box for pizzerias to be executing.
Were those techniques that you needed to learn and that the staff needed to learn? Or did somebody kind of bring that in? It's like, no, I've done this before. Let's give it a go.
Well, it started with the banh mi pizza. So, so my chef de cuisine, Sean Little, who helped open Tilia, went on to Travail, opened Pig May Pizza. He's been throughout the whole city. He's
Sure.
a well-respected cook in town.
Sean's great.
Yeah, he is.
So he's the one that really took the pickling program and just to another level.
Nice. Yep.
So-
And brought that in.
And then he taught us all how to do it.
Yeah. A little mentorship in-house.
Exactly.
The Foodie Friday 5. We'll start with Pip. What's the first thing you ever made by yourself in the kitchen that you had to cook?
God, an egg, and I burned the hell out of it.
How old were you?
I was probably 7, and I don't think I used butter. I think I just turned the stove all the way up.
Says non-stick on it.
Mom and Dad were gone. I was like, I'm gonna make an egg. I'm hungry.
Yep.
Nope.
Didn't eat that egg.
No, the whole house stank.
Yeah. Lucky Charms. That's what happened after that.
Mm-hmm.
Pizza Pete. What's
wait,
the,
one
I'm
second.
sorry. Okay,
What's
yeah.
the first cocktail you ever
Oh,
made?
there you go. Good question, Lid.
I'm gonna throw a curveball answer. When I was 5 years old, I remember being in with my friend. We would take just basically any liquid we found in the bathroom, and we'd all blend it all together in the toilet and mix it with a toilet brush, and we'd just make potions. We'd call them. So over the course of a couple of weeks, hundreds of dollars of bathroom products went down. We'd literally just pour them all in and stir them up and look at nothing would happen. It would smell really weird, and then we'd flush it and try again. And eventually,
Cleansers, mouthwash, whatever.
Yeah, their older
Toilet
brother,
potion.
his older brothers found out what we were doing and was like, "Oh, this is where
This
where my shampoo's been going." And he told us he'd cut our heads off if we did it again.
And my British Sterling cologne,
Right.
my high karate.
So that was probably me as a bartender at age 5.
Peter Campbell, what's the first thing you ever made by yourself in the kitchen you had to cook?
An egg also.
An egg also?
Oddly,
How was
yes.
your success?
It was not successful. My brothers, who hazed me significantly in my life and continue to this day,
That's what brothers are for.
convinced me I had to cut the egg in half first. And so I got closer to cutting my fingers off
Cut it in
than
half.
that was the first attempt at
Through the
cooking
shell.
something,
Yeah,
and it
cut it in half through the shell.
never found anything warm.
Tricky things, eggs.
Pip Hansen, what's the most pretentious food you crave?
I don't believe in pretentious.
Okay.
I don't think that's a thing. I think people.
That's
That sounds like
something
a dodge.
we're trying to do as well. Is we say
don't-
that in love because we're trying to demystify the term foodie.
I don't believe in pretentious. People, I think people, when they use the term pretentious, they're using it wrong. But to point that out would actually be pretentious. I don't believe in it.
Maybe just
it's like
cheeky.
people think passion about something esoteric is pretentious.
Yep.
I
Agree.
totally disagree.
I
I don't acknowledge the term.
How about you, Pete?
I don't even know how to follow up on that. Am I pretentious to acknowledge it?
I don't know.
Slightly, perhaps.
Perhaps. Hey.
I don't know. I would tell you that right now the foie gras wontons at Tilia's late night menu are something I've ditched my whole staff at 11:55 on a Saturday night and ran out the door to get.
Good answer, Pete Campbell.
To answer your question in a different way, the fish taco torta at Tilia
Oh, I love that.
is
All
like
these plugs Tilia's getting. This is
Well, they
Tilia's
deserve
the
it.
bomb.
They absolutely deserve it. Pip Hansen, which person in your life taught you the most about food?
about food.
About food. I think we got some good examples from you from the drinky side, but about food.
About food. What do I know about food? I don't know anything about food. I'm dodging all these. I'm just gonna do the
Evade.
Matrix thing.
A no answer is a valid answer, so don't worry about that. You want to think about that for a second?
Yeah, I do.
Okay,
I've
no
got an
worries.
answer, but it's not gonna be a good one.
How about you, Pizza Pete?
my mom,
Mama. Yeah,
Barb Campbell.
nice. Does she still teach you to this day?
Oh yeah, all the time.
Yeah,
I mean, you can ask Sean. She sends both Sean and I probably 5 recipes a week.
Oh, that's sweet.
It's awesome.
Yeah, it's really nice.
Bunch of mom cooking, or is it just pizza?
No, it's everything. You name it. It's all sorts of dishes. They all come from mom. It's fun. She's her pictures on the wall and she's a teenager, and it's just really cool to have her involved in the restaurant.
That's nice.
Have an answer, Pip?
Maybe you should just move on to Pip's next question.
Yeah,
Okay.
Because this one's a little bit easier.
Okay. Well, the smell of this food makes you feel the hungriest.
dry martini.
It counts. It does.
That's a food, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that'll work. But makes you feel the hungriest.
Oh,
yeah?
I'm super hungry. Yeah. I want one every day before dinner.
Yeah, there you go.
Perfect thing.
What about you, Pizza Pete? Is it a cop out to say pizza?
No. It's totally legitimate.
Is it pizza?
Around pizza all the time.
Is it pizza, though, or is it something else?
Probably it makes me feel the hungriest. I'd say the smell of that perfectly done crust that I get when I walk past the oven.
On that note, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Do you ever get just totally sick of pizza?
No.
Really? You're lucky. Excellent.
Do you get totally sick of cocktails?
No, but I mean,
Do you mix yourself cocktails?
I don't make myself
Yeah,
cocktails.
so there's an odd,
When's
there's
the last
sort
time
of
you
an
had
odd
a
twist.
cocktail?
Tuesday.
Tuesday.
Yeah.
And did somebody make that for you?
No, I made it for myself.
And what was it?
It was a dry martini.
Before dinner?
I'm a one-trick pony, man.
Before dinner?
No, well after.
Okay.
But they're
But it
appropriate.
wasn't my chicken.
They're like, they're always appropriate.
So dry martini, like a 90-10, that sort of thing? That dry? or-
65-25.
Oh, 65-25. Okay.
Pretty wet by modern
Yeah,
standards.
yeah, indeed. Pip, what's your favorite guilty pleasure food? What's your guilty pleasure
Oh
food?
God, I don't believe in
And-
guilty pleasures
Yeah,
either.
but look
We're
at,
gonna go
but
here.
you know, we're talking about something again, demystifying the foodie. There you go. I was just going to say it's something that maybe is in a box off the shelf at the
Budweiser.
grocery store
Sure,
or the liquor
Budweiser.
store. You know?
Budweiser. I mean, because
Yeah.
I think we should rephrase the food question in drink terms because that's obviously why I keep thinking about drinks. I don't know anything about food. I know a little bit about drinks.
But the foodie term for us, as Lydia says, we're always trying to demystify it, and it really does take into account the worlds of food, beverages, just all of that bigger umbrella. So Budweiser was an absolutely honest and forthright answer.
I'll fight for how good that beer is.
Yeah. Long neck bottles.
Ideally.
Yeah, exactly.
Cans
yeah.
is a little weird.
Yeah, I'm with you. A long neck bottle, coming out of a cooler, especially
Cold as hell.
cold
Yeah.
as hell out of a
Yeah.
cooler.
Yeah.
Whether you're
I don't
on
wanna
the
taste
beach,
it.
on the beach,
Slow
a boat,
motion?
on the beach, a boat, or after
Does it have to
mowing
be
the
in slow
lawn.
motion? Commercial.
Well, you're thinking about large horses.
Large horses. Some swimsuits.
Pete Campbell, your guilty pleasure food.
Donuts. I love donuts.
And from anywhere specifically?
There's so many fun joints doing donuts in town right now. There's one right around the corner from here. There's Glam Doll. I mean, there's, they're all great.
Yeah.
And I don't have SA's donuts are good.
Yeah, they make you
Doesn't
feel
matter,
good.
yeah.
Guilty pleasure.
Totally.
Gentlemen, we got 2 minutes left on the show. Pip Hansen, you're taking some time off. You're off to London. Another learning experience for you here. Is that the idea behind this?
That's exactly the idea. Inspiration seeking. So
Mm-hmm.
I just find every time I've left and come back, I feel like I've changed so much, but nothing around me nothing has kind of changed at the same pace. So I'm hoping for another one of those sort of almost like traveling in time.
Yeah.
A little bit of hyperlapse.
And you're really planning on going there and letting the chips fall, the fish and chips fall where they may. So to speak? Sorry,
Yeah.
That's too easy,
That's the
too.
idea. I mean, I'm just going to kind of hit the ground and
Nice.
start running.
How about you, Pizza Pete? What's in the future for Red Wagon? So, mobile thing gets it started.
Yep.
Brick and mortar operation is underway on 54th and Penn Avenue South. What's the summer like? A second location already in the headspace? Anything like that or not?
I'd
or
say
what?
that right on the forefront, we've got the brunch starting this
There you go.
Saturday. Brunch
Yeah.
starts from 9 to 2, and we're going to run. Most of us in the service industry work Saturdays and Sundays, so we're going to do a service industry brunch on Mondays as well.
Okay, that's
awesome.
nice.
9 to 2. Not solely for service people. There's no badge you need to show when you walk in. So I'd say brunch is probably the thing that's about to happen right now.
Are you guys open for dinner on Mondays as well?
We are.
Great. 7 days a week?
Yep, 7
Right
days
on.
a week. So the mobile operation, as you said, BT is probably the next thing the oven's out. I've got to recure it every season.
Sure.
So when I leave here, I'm going to go light a small fire and watch it burn.
And I might add, a layer of scheduling that comes to mind in my head here, saying that you don't work Sundays, but with brunch happening Sunday, you going to be working or not?
Oh, I'll be working
This Sunday.
I'll
Yeah.
be working,
Oh, yeah. I would
right.
think so.
Yeah, I've been trying to. I've had 4 days off since August 5th, and I attempted to take the time off, but I usually end up in the restaurant. At some point.
Big talker,
Yeah.
but yeah, the magnetic draw of your own shop. I mean, who can blame you? That's the entrepreneur at work inside you.
Exactly.
Pip Hansen, all the best to you. Great work at Marvel Bar and all the places before that, and catch up with us when you come back from London, won't you? Because what I want to do is talk a little bit more about some music and things and experiences, and join us again, won't you?
Happily. Thank you.
Always an invitation for you too, Pizza Pete Campbell.
Thanks, sir.
Good luck on everything with you.
Thank you, Dad.
Thank you, Lydia.
Thank you.
Do you want to go out with a rap here, Pip, or not?
I left my rhyme book at home.
All right, well, we'll save it for next time.
Yes.
Maybe some inspiration will come from London. It's another Foodie Friday on the Alive and Social Network. Our thanks again to Pip Hansen from Marvel Bar and Pizza, Pete Campbell from the Red Wagon Pizza Company. My name is Brian Turner.
I am Lydia Turner. Foodie Friday, coming in hot, always fresh, never stale.
Thanks for listening.